I walked into my childhood home after 15 years to find my wife wearing my dead mother's wedding ring, serving champagne to strangers in the lake house I built with my bare hands. She looked at me like I was a ghost, because according to the death certificate she filed 8 years ago, I was supposed to be rotting in a Mexican cartel grave. My name is Henry Castellano. I'm 58 years old, and I just discovered that being declared dead is the best thing that ever happened to me, because dead men can see everything. Dead men can move in shadows, and dead men can destroy the living without anyone seeing it coming. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible. It sounds like something from a movie, but every word is true. Every detail actually happened. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why patience isn't just a virtue. It's the most powerful weapon a man can possess. Let me take you back to where this nightmare started, because understanding how deep the betrayal went requires knowing who I was before everything fell apart. 15 years ago, I was a different person entirely. Henry Castellano, senior architect at Morrison & Klein, one of the top architectural firms in Seattle. I had the corner office on the 14th floor with views of Elliott Bay. I had the German sedan, the tailored Italian suits, the expensive watch collection. I had a wife, Rebecca, who I'd been with since college. 23 years of marriage that I thought was solid as granite. We had the perfect suburban life in Bellevue. The 5-bedroom house with the 3-car garage, the country club membership, the annual trips to Hawaii and Europe. From the outside, we were living the American dream, except we didn't have kids. Rebecca said she wasn't ready. Always next year, always when the timing was better, always when her career was more stable, when we had more money saved, when the house was paid off. There was always a reason to wait. I didn't push it. I was busy building my career, designing luxury homes for tech millionaires who had more money than sense. 20,000 square foot mansions with wine, cellars that cost more than most, people's houses, indoor basketball courts, home theaters, infinity pools. I was good at my job, really good. I was pulling in $400,000 a year, and I loved the work. I loved seeing my designs come to life, turning sketches into structures that would stand for generations. But then my mother got sick. Lung cancer, stage 4. She'd been a smoker for 40 years. Winston Lights, a pack and a half a day, and it finally caught up with her. The doctors gave her 6 months. She lasted 4. I watched this woman who raised me alone after Dad abandoned us when I was 3. This woman who worked double shifts at a greasy spoon diner to keep me fed and clothed. This woman who never missed a parent-teacher conference, even when she was dead on her feet from exhaustion, waste away to nothing in a hospice bed. It destroyed me. Every visit she was smaller, frailer, more transparent, like she was fading from this world one cell at a time. 2 weeks before she died, she grabbed my hand with what little strength she had left. Her fingers were like bird bones, so thin I was afraid I'd break them. "Henry," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping machines. "I don't want to die in this place. I don't want my last memories to be these white walls and the smell of disinfectant and strangers checking my vitals every 4 hours. I want to see the lake one more time, the place where we used to go when you were little. Remember? Lake Serenity. Remember how peaceful it was?" I remembered. God, I remembered every detail. Lake Serenity, 2 hours north of Seattle, tucked into the Cascade foothills like a secret. We'd go there every summer when I was a kid, back when we had nothing. Back when a tank of gas and a cooler of sandwiches was the height of luxury. She'd pack peanut butter and jelly, some chips, a thermos of lemonade. We'd spend the whole day on the shore. She'd read her romance novels, the ones with the shirtless men on the covers that embarrassed me as a teenager. I'd build castles in the sand, skip stones, swim until my lips turned blue. It was the only vacation we could afford, but it was perfect. Those days at Lake Serenity were the happiest memories of my childhood. Just me and Mom. No bills, no stress, no reminders of how poor we were. Just peace. I made her a promise that day in the hospice, holding her skeletal hand, watching her struggle to breathe. I promised I'd buy land on that lake. I'd build her a house there. Not a cabin, not some cheap prefab structure, but a real house. Beautiful. Worthy of her. She'd spend her final days watching the water, peaceful and comfortable, surrounded by the place she loved most. She smiled when I made that promise. It was the last real smile I saw on her face. She died before I could keep that promise. I was holding her hand when she took her last breath. A small gasp followed by nothing, just terrible silence. The machine started screaming. Nurses rushed in, but I knew she was gone. I felt it. The woman who gave me everything, who sacrificed her entire life for me, died in a sterile hospice room instead of by the lake where she wanted to be. I failed her. That failure haunted me every single day. But I swore on everything I had, standing over her body in that room, that I'd build that house anyway, in her memory, a place where her spirit could rest, even if her body couldn't be there. It became an obsession. No, more than that. It became my purpose. I threw myself into the project like a man possessed, like someone trying to outrun grief by staying in constant motion. I found 5 acres on the north shore of Lake Serenity, pristine, secluded, with 100 feet of private waterfront, towering Douglas firs, a natural meadow, a gentle slope down to the water. It was perfect. Exactly the kind of place Mom would have loved. The land alone cost me $800,000. I didn't care. I liquidated my entire retirement account, cashed out my stock options, took out a massive loan against our Bellevue house and bought it. Rebecca was furious. She said I was being irrational, that I was making financial decisions based on emotion instead of logic. She was probably right. I didn't care. Then I designed the house. Not just any house. The house. The house I'd been training my entire career to design. I poured everything I knew, every skill I'd developed, every aesthetic principle I'd learned, into those blueprints. 3,000 square feet of custom timber frame construction. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, specially engineered to withstand the winter storms that battered the lake. A wraparound deck built from old-growth cedar, every board personally selected. A stone fireplace with a chimney I designed to look like it grew organically from the landscape. A dock extending 50 feet into the lake. A guest house tucked into the trees, small but perfect, a quiet retreat. Every detail was intentional. Every material was top grade. The doorknobs were custom bronze. The light fixtures were hand-blown glass from an artisan in Portland. The kitchen counters were cut from a single slab of granite. I sourced from a quarry in Montana. I hired the best contractors I could find. Master carpenters who'd been building timber frames for 30 years. Stonemasons who'd learned their trade in Italy. I was on site every single weekend, sometimes sleeping in my truck in the driveway, personally overseeing every nail, every board, every stone. I needed it to be perfect. This was my mother's house. This was my promise made physical. I couldn't fail her again. Rebecca hated it. From the very beginning, she hated everything about the project. She said I was obsessed, which was true. She said I was wasting our money on a memorial to a dead woman instead of investing in our future, which felt like a knife in my chest every time she said it. We fought constantly, screaming matches that would last hours. She wanted me to sell the land, cut my losses, move on with my life, accept that my mother was dead and building a house wouldn't bring her back. I refused. This wasn't negotiable. This was sacred. After 18 months of brutal construction, working myself to exhaustion, burning through every dollar I had and then borrowing more, bleeding myself dry financially and emotionally, the house was finished. I stood on that deck on a Friday evening in late September, watching the sunset turn the lake into liquid gold, and I felt my mother's presence. I felt like I'd finally done something that mattered. Something real, something permanent. For the first time since she died, I felt at peace. Rebecca visited exactly once. Just once. I begged her to come see it, to understand why this mattered so much to me. She drove up on a Saturday morning, stayed for 2 hours, and left. She walked through the house with her arms crossed, her face twisted in disgust, touching nothing, appreciating nothing. This is what you bankrupted us for? A cabin in the middle of nowhere that we'll use maybe twice a year? It's not a cabin, I said. I built this for my mother. This is her house, your dead mother, she shot back. She's gone, Henry. She's been gone for 2 years. But we're still here struggling, drowning in debt because you poured $2 million into this vanity project. Do you understand what you've done to us? Our retirement is gone. We're underwater on our mortgage. My friends are asking why we don't go on trips anymore, why we're not at the country club, why we're driving 10-year-old cars. And it's because of this. She gestured at the house with contempt. This monument to your guilt, it wasn't a vanity project, I said quietly. It was love, she laughed. A cold, bitter sound I'd never heard from her before. Love doesn't pay the mortgage on our real house. Henry, love doesn't fund our retirement. Love doesn't explain to my parents why we're broke. You're an idiot. You wasted everything on a dead woman's fantasy. She left that day and I didn't see her for 2 months. She stopped answering my calls. She wouldn't respond to texts. I stayed at the lake house, taking freelance projects remotely, trying to rebuild my finances, trying to figure out how to fix my marriage. I thought the distance might help. I thought she'd cool down, process her anger, and we'd find our way back to each other. I thought we could rebuild what we'd lost. I was wrong about everything. One night, late November, cold rain hammering the windows. I got a call from Rebecca. She was crying, hysterical, her words barely comprehensible. She said there'd been a break-in at our Bellevue house. She said someone had smashed the back door, that she was terrified, that she was hiding in the bedroom closet, that she needed me to come home immediately, that she couldn't call the police because her phone was dying and she needed me right now. I drove 4 hours through a storm to get there. Torrential rain, zero visibility, white-knuckling the steering wheel the entire way, running every yellow light, pushing my truck to 80 miles an hour on the interstate. When I arrived, the house was dark, completely dark. No lights on inside, no police cars, no signs of forced entry. The back door was intact. Nothing was broken. I felt a cold dread creeping up my spine, but I pushed it down. Maybe she'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd panicked over nothing. I found Rebecca in the living room with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, maybe 6'2", expensive charcoal suit, slicked back hair, cold eyes. "This is my lawyer," Rebecca said. Her voice was calm now. No more tears, no more panic. Just cold calculation. "We're getting divorced, Henry." I stared at her. "What? You heard me." "I want a divorce. I want half of everything, including that ridiculous lake house." "I want my life back over my dead body," I said. The lawyer smiled. "That can be arranged." Before I could process what he meant, before I could react, 3 men came out of the kitchen. Big men, muscle. One of them was holding a baseball bat. They moved fast, professional, like they'd done this before. The first one hit me in the stomach, driving all the air from my lungs. I doubled over. The second one hit me across the back of the head with something heavy. Stars exploded in my vision. I went down hard, tasting blood, my ears ringing. They kicked me. Ribs, kidneys, face. Professional violence designed to hurt but not kill. Not yet. They dragged me out to a van in the garage. I was barely conscious, fading in and out. But I heard Rebecca's voice, clear, cold, emotionless. "Make sure no one finds him. And make sure it looks like he just disappeared. Walked away from his life. I need him declared dead in 7 years for the insurance. But I'd prefer sooner if you can arrange it." The men laughed. "Lady, where he's going, 7 days is generous." I woke up in darkness. Complete darkness. My head was pounding like someone was driving nails through my skull. My hands were zip-tied behind my back, cutting into my wrists. I was in the back of a moving vehicle. No windows, no light. Just the rumble of tires on asphalt. The smell of rust and motor oil and something else. Something organic and rotten. We drove for hours. I lost track of time. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body screaming in pain. When the vehicle finally stopped, they dragged me out. I could see now. Desert. Endless desert under a brutal sun. Mexico, based on the landscape. Scrub brush, rock formations, mountains in the distance. We were nowhere. Middle of nothing. They threw me into a concrete room. No furniture, no windows. Just a drain in the floor and a steel door with a small slot at the bottom. The heat was unbearable. The walls radiated it like an oven. For 3 days, no one came. No food, no water. Just heat and silence and the certainty that I was going to die in that room. I tried to stay rational, tried to think my way out, but there was no way out. The door was solid steel. The walls were concrete. I had no tools, no weapons, no leverage. I was going to die of dehydration in a concrete box in the Mexican desert, and no one would ever know what happened to me. On the 4th day, the door opened. Light flooded in, blinding me. A man walked in. Short, stocky, maybe 5'6", covered in tattoos, teardrops under his eye, a scorpion on his neck. He spoke in Spanish, rapid fire, but I understood enough from high school classes and working with Latino contractors. "Your wife paid us $50,000 to dispose of you." Normally we would. Easy money. "But my boss, he has a better idea." "You're an architect, yes? You design buildings?" I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. "Good. You work for us now. You design things. We use them. You do good work, you live. You refuse, you end up in pieces in the desert. Nobody will find you. Nobody will look. You're already a ghost." "What kind of things?" I managed to croak. He smiled. "Hidden compartments, smuggling routes, safe houses, tunnels. You make us invisible. You make our business untouchable. You do this, we keep you alive. Simple." So I worked. For 15 years, I designed for the Sinaloa cartel. I created false walls that could hide tons of product. I designed houses with escape tunnels that opened with hidden mechanisms. I built safe houses across Mexico and the American Southwest with panic rooms, secret passages, rooms that looked like solid concrete but opened when you pressed a specific brick in a specific sequence. I designed vehicles with hidden compartments so sophisticated, drug dogs couldn't detect them. I created warehouse layouts that maximized efficiency while minimizing visibility. I became valuable, and valuable meant alive. I kept my head down. I did what I was told. I never asked questions. I learned Spanish fluently. I learned the cartel hierarchy, who to avoid, who to respect, how to survive in a world where life was cheaper than bullets. I watched men get executed for minor mistakes. I watched people disappear because they knew too much or talked too much or looked at the wrong person wrong. I survived by being useful and invisible. The years blurred together. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. I stopped counting. I stopped thinking about my old life. It was too painful. Every memory of Seattle, of my career, of Rebecca, of my mother's house, felt like pressing on a broken bone. So I buried it. I became someone else. Roberto, they called me the American architect, the gringo who builds impossible things until 8 months ago. I was working on a compound in Guadalajara, designing an underground bunker system for one of the cartel's regional bosses. I was in the main house using their internet to research structural engineering specs when I overheard 2 of the cartel's accountants talking in the next room. They were discussing a wire transfer, $50,000 to a woman named Rebecca Castellano in Seattle, Washington. I froze. Didn't we already pay her? One of them asked. That was 15 years ago. Now she wants more to keep quiet. About the gringo architect we've got working for us. She's threatening to go to the FBI with information about our operations. She says she has proof we kidnapped an American citizen. The other one laughed. She's stupid. She's going to get herself killed. You don't extort the cartel. The boss is furious. He's talking about sending someone to Seattle to handle it permanently. Rebecca, my Rebecca, she knew I was alive. She'd known for 15 years. She'd taken the $50,000 to arrange my abduction, and now she was trying to extort more money by threatening to expose them. She was playing with fire. And suddenly, for the first time in 15 years, I felt something other than numb resignation. I felt hope. Because if she was threatening the cartel, she was making a fatal mistake, and that meant the situation was about to change. That meant there might be an opportunity. 2 weeks later, the compound was raided. It was dawn, the sun just breaking over the mountains. I was asleep in the workers' barracks when the explosion started. Mexican military, backed by American DEA agents, helicopters, armored vehicles, automatic weapons fire that sounded like the world ending. It was absolute chaos. Sicarios running everywhere, trying to fight back, trying to escape. Bodies dropping, smoke and fire and screaming. I saw my chance. While everyone was focused on the battle, I ran. I made it to the perimeter fence, climbed over while bullets whizzed past my head, tearing chunks out of the concrete walls around me. I disappeared into the jungle beyond the compound. I walked for 3 days, living on rainwater I caught in my cupped hands and roots I dug from the ground, sleeping in trees, moving constantly, always moving, until I reached a small village. I traded my watch, a cheap Casio that had somehow survived 15 years, for a ride to Tijuana. Crossing back into America was surprisingly easy. I walked across at the San Isidro border crossing with hundreds of other people. No passport, no ID, nothing. When customs asked who I was, I said Henry Castellano. I gave them my social security number, the one I still remembered after all these years. They ran it. The computer said I was dead, declared dead 7 years ago. But standing in front of them alive complicated things. They didn't know what to do with me. After 6 hours of questioning, they let me go with the promise to report to immigration services. Within 30 days to sort out my legal status, I made my way to El Paso and called the one person I knew I could trust. Marcus Webb, my college roommate, the guy who'd been my best man at my wedding, who'd become a private investigator in Phoenix. I hadn't spoken to him in 16 years. Marcus, I said when he answered. It's Henry. Silence. Long silence. Then Henry Castellano? You're dead, man. I went to your memorial service. Rebecca gave a beautiful speech about how you wandered off during a hiking trip and never came back. They found your truck but never found you. We all thought you'd fallen into a ravine or been attacked by a bear or something. I'm not dead, I said. I need help. Where are you? El Paso, stay there. I'm coming. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go anywhere. Just wait. Marcus picked me up 6 hours later. He pulled up in a black SUV, and when he saw me, his face went pale. Jesus Christ. Henry, you look like you've been through hell. He didn't ask questions. He just handed me a burner phone, a change of clothes, a thick envelope of cash, maybe $5,000, and a bottle of water. We drove back to Phoenix, and I told him everything. Every detail. The betrayal, the abduction, the 15 years with the cartel. Everything. When I finished, we were parked outside his office. He was quiet for a long time, staring through the windshield. So what do you want to do? He finally asked. I want to see what she did with my life, I said. I want to see what she built on my grave. Marcus nodded slowly. I can help with that. But Henry, if half of what you're saying is true, this woman is dangerous. She tried to have you killed once. She won't hesitate to do it again if you reveal yourself. You can't just walk back into your old life. I don't want my old life, I said. I want justice. Over the next month, Marcus and I did reconnaissance. Deep reconnaissance. He had contacts in law enforcement, access to databases, surveillance equipment, hacking tools. We dug into Rebecca's life without leaving a single trace. What we found was worse than I could have imagined. She'd had me declared dead 3 years after I disappeared, using falsified police reports and testimony from Derek Paulson, the lawyer who'd been in our living room that night. She collected a $2 million life insurance policy. She sold our Bellevue house for $1.3 million, and she'd moved into my lake house, my mother's house, the house I built with my own hands as a sacred promise. But she hadn't just moved in. She'd turned it into a business, an upscale event venue called Serenity Estate Weddings and Events. She was renting out my mother's house for $15,000 a weekend. Weddings, corporate retreats, private parties, anniversary celebrations. She'd renovated the interior, ripping out all the custom woodwork I'd personally selected and hand-finished, replacing it with generic luxury finishes from Restoration Hardware. She'd added a commercial kitchen with industrial appliances. She'd expanded the deck, doubling its size. She'd built a parking lot where the wildflower garden used to be, paving over the native plants I'd carefully cultivated. The guest house, the small cabin I'd built as a quiet retreat where my mother could read and rest, had been converted into Rebecca's personal residence. She lived there full-time, running the business, getting rich off the property I'd bled for, and she wasn't alone. Marcus pulled up surveillance photos. Rebecca had a partner, Derek Paulson, the lawyer. He was listed as the co-owner of Serenity Estate Events, LLC, more digging revealed. They'd gotten married 4 years ago. A small ceremony at the lake house. According to public records, they were living together, running the business together, profiting from my mother's memory together. I stared at the photos for hours, sitting in Marcus's office, unable to look away. Rebecca looked older but good, well-maintained. Expensive clothes, professional hair color, perfect makeup, the kind of confident smile that comes from success and zero guilt. Derek was silver-haired now, distinguished-looking, wearing suits that cost $3,000 or $4,000. They looked happy. They looked successful. They looked like they'd gotten away with murder. Because they had, Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. What's the play, Henry? We can go to the police. We have evidence of fraud, maybe attempted murder. We can... No, I interrupted. Think about it. What proof do I have? I've been working for a drug cartel for 15 years. I have no documentation of what Rebecca did. It would be my word against hers, and I'm legally dead. Going to the authorities would likely land me in federal prison for my cartel work. Not her. The FBI would be more interested in what I know about Sinaloa operations than what Rebecca did to me 15 years ago. So what then? I thought about it. 15 years with the cartel had taught me patience. It had taught me how to plan, how to execute complex operations, how to be invisible, how to destroy enemies without them ever seeing you coming. I needed to use those skills now. I needed to do what I'd learned in 15 years of survival. Be patient, plan carefully, use the one advantage I had. I'm dead, I said. And dead men can move unseen. Marcus frowned. What are you thinking? I need to get close. I need to see the operation from the inside. I need to understand exactly how everything works before I tear it all down. She knows your face. Not anymore. Look at me, he looked. I'd lost 60 pounds in captivity. My hair was completely gray. My face was weathered, scarred, aged 20 years beyond my actual age. I looked nothing like the polished architect who'd disappeared 15 years ago. With the right approach, I could be invisible. Marcus made some calls. He had contacts in the world of false identities. People who made new lives for witnesses in protection, for undercover agents, for people who needed to disappear. 2 weeks later, I had a complete new identity. Robert Hayes, contractor and handyman from Boise, Idaho, complete with a driver's license, social security number, credit history, employment records, references, all fake, all untraceable, all perfect. I did my research. Serenity Estate Events had a website, professional photos of the property, glowing testimonials, a calendar showing they were booked solid for the next 8 months. They were making a fortune. At the bottom of the home page was a link, careers. I clicked it. They were hiring for property maintenance. The job posting said they needed someone to handle repairs, landscaping, event setup and breakdown, general handyman work. $18 an hour, paid in cash. I applied using my Robert Hayes identity. I submitted a resume listing. 15 years of construction and maintenance, experience at various properties in Idaho and Montana. All fake but verified by Marcus's contacts. 2 days later, I got a call. Rebecca's voice. I hadn't heard it in 15 years, but I recognized it instantly. That particular tone, slightly nasal, the way she pronounced her vowels. Mr. Hayes, this is Rebecca Paulson from Serenity Estate Events. We'd like to interview you for the maintenance position. Can you come by tomorrow morning? Tomorrow works, I said, keeping my voice neutral. What time? 10 o'clock. I'll give you the address. She gave me the address. My address. The house I designed. The house I built. I'll be there, I said. I drove to Lake Serenity the next morning, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I turned onto the private road leading to the property, when I saw the trees I'd left standing specifically because my mother loved Douglas firs, when I saw the lake through the gaps in the forest, I had to pull over. I sat there for 10 minutes, breathing, forcing myself to stay calm, to stay in character. I was Robert Hayes, quiet, competent, invisible. When I pulled up the driveway, I had to fight to keep my composure. The house looked different, wrong. The natural cedar siding I'd chosen, that had cost a fortune because I wanted it to weather naturally to a beautiful silver gray, had been painted white, stark white. The stone chimney was the same, but everything else had been commercialized, sanitized, stripped of soul. There was a large sign near the entrance. Serenity Estate, private event venue, no. Trespassing. The parking lot where the wildflower garden used to be was freshly paved, lined with expensive landscape lighting. I parked and walked to the guest house. My hands were in my pockets to hide their shaking. Rebecca answered the door. She looked at me with polite professional interest. No recognition, none. Her eyes passed over my face like I was a stranger, like I was nobody. Mr. Hayes? That's me, I said. Come in. I stepped into what used to be my sanctuary, the place I'd designed as a quiet retreat. She'd gutted it completely. The cozy interior with the wood-burning stove and the built-in bookshelves was now a modern office. Sleek desk, filing cabinets, a wall covered with photos showing weddings and corporate events held at the property. There was a coffee bar in the corner, expensive espresso machine, the kind that costs $3,000. We sat down at her desk, and she ran through the job requirements. Basic maintenance, fixing things that broke, mowing lawns, trimming hedges, setting up chairs and tables for events, breaking everything down after events, some light carpentry and electrical work. $18 an hour, paid in cash, under the table. We prefer to keep things simple, she said with a smile. Avoid the whole payroll tax situation. I assume that works for you? I prefer simple, I said. She asked a few basic questions about my experience. I gave her the rehearsed answers. She seemed satisfied. When can you start? Tomorrow if you need me. Perfect. We have a wedding this Saturday. I'll need you here Friday to help with setup. Wear work clothes, boots, bring your own tools if you have them. We'll provide anything specialized. Sounds good? She stood up and shook my hand. Her hand, the hand that used to wear my mother's wedding ring, the hand that had signed my death certificate. It took every ounce of control not to react. Welcome to Serenity Estate, Mr. Hayes. Thank you. Mrs. Paulson, I'm looking forward to working here. For 2 months, I worked at Serenity Estate. I mowed the lawns I'd planted. I fixed railings I'd installed. I set up chairs and tables for weddings in the house I'd designed as a memorial to my mother. I was invisible. Just another handyman. Quiet, competent, forgettable. I kept my head down. I said yes, ma'am, and no, sir. I worked hard. I never complained. And I watched everything. I learned their routines. Rebecca woke up at 6 every morning, made coffee in that expensive espresso machine, and spent 2 hours on her laptop handling bookings and correspondence. Derek usually slept until 8, then went for a run around the lake. He'd come back, shower, and head into Seattle for his law practice 3 days a week. The other days he worked from the guest house office. They ran a tight operation. Professional, efficient, serenity. Estate was grossing about $70,000 a month during peak season. After expenses, they were probably clearing $40,000. $500,000 a year, built entirely on stolen property, built on my mother's grave. I watched them interact with clients. They were charming, attentive. They made every bride feel special, every corporate client feel valued. They were good at what they did. If I didn't know the truth, I would have thought they were decent people, running an honest business, but I knew the truth. And I watched for other truths, other secrets. Every Friday night, they hosted something they called Friends Poker Night. It started around 8 p.m., 5 or 6. Regulars would show up. I learned their names, their faces. Robert Chen, a tech CEO. James Morrison, a county superior court judge. Senator Patricia Whitmore, state senator for our district. A few other wealthy locals. They'd play in the dining room, the room where I'd envisioned my mother hosting family dinners. At first I thought it was just a friendly game. Then I started noticing details. The players arrived with briefcases, expensive leather briefcases that looked heavy. They'd set them by their chairs. During the games I'd be working outside, putting away event equipment, and I'd see through the windows. Money, stacks of it. This wasn't a friendly game. This was high stakes, probably illegal gambling. Tens of thousands of dollars changing hands, and there were other things. I saw Senator Whitmore doing lines of cocaine off the table during a break. I saw Judge Morrison accepting an envelope from Derek, thick with cash, in exchange for something whispered I couldn't hear. This wasn't just poker. This was corruption, bribery, all happening in my mother's house. I needed evidence. I needed to document everything. So I installed cameras. Tiny pinhole cameras, the kind intelligence agencies use, no bigger than a shirt button. I'd learned about surveillance from the cartel. I knew what worked. I placed cameras in the smoke detectors, in the decorative beams I'd personally carved 15 years ago, in picture frames, in the potted plants Rebecca kept everywhere. I installed audio devices, professional grade. They could pick up a whisper from across a room. I placed them in the chandelier above the dining table, in the living room, in the office, even in the master bedroom of the main house. Within a week, I had complete coverage, video and audio. I could monitor everything in real time from a tablet Marcus had given me. I'd sit in my truck after work, park down the road, and watch, listen, document, and what I documented was damning. I recorded the poker games. I recorded Senator Whitmore snorting cocaine. I recorded Judge Morrison taking bribes from Derek in exchange for favorable rulings in Derek's legal cases. I recorded conversations about evading taxes, about laundering money through shell companies, about buying off building inspectors. But I also found something else. I noticed Rebecca made regular trips to the guest house office safe. A large floor safe, probably weighing 500 pounds, bolted to the concrete foundation. She'd open it late at night when she thought no one was watching. I couldn't see inside from the cameras, but I knew whatever was in there was important. I needed to see inside that safe. Breaking into it wasn't hard. I'd designed hiding places and security systems for a cartel. A residential safe was child's play, but I needed the right opportunity. I needed them both gone. That opportunity came 3 weeks into my employment. Rebecca and Derek were going to Seattle for a weekend. Some event at Derek's law firm. They'd be gone Friday night through Sunday afternoon. They told me to keep an eye on the property, water the plants, handle any issues that came up, the moment their car disappeared down the driveway. Friday evening, I went to work. I picked the lock on the guest house door. The safe was in the office closet. I knelt in front of it with my tools. It was a Sentry safe, mid-range, probably cost them $2,000. Decent for keeping out amateurs, useless against someone who'd cracked cartel safes designed by paranoid drug lords. 20 minutes later, I had it open. Inside were documents, stacks of them. I photographed everything with a high-resolution camera, working methodically, making sure I got every page, every detail. The first thing I found was a copy of my death certificate, signed by Derek as a notary, certified by a coroner I'd never heard of. Cause of death, presumed dead after disappearance during hiking trip. Body not recovered. It looked official. It looked real. It was completely fraudulent. There were police reports. Forged police reports claiming I'd been reported missing, that search and rescue had looked for me, that I'd never been found. All lies. All fabricated. There were emails. Printed emails between Rebecca and Derek dating back 17 years. I read them with growing horror. I can't stand him anymore. One from Rebecca read, "He's obsessed with his dead mother. He spent $2 million on that house. We're broke because of his obsession. I want out, but I want the money." Derek's response, "Divorce is expensive and you'd only get half. If he was gone, you'd get everything. Life insurance, property, assets. Let me look into some options." Another email, dated 2 months later. "I found some people who can handle the situation. It'll cost $50K, but it's guaranteed. They'll make it look like he disappeared. No body, no crime. After 7 years, we can have him declared dead legally." Rebecca's response, "Do it. I don't care anymore. I just want my life back." There were more plans, details, discussions about how to stage it, how to avoid suspicion. It was all there. Written proof of conspiracy to commit murder. I found financial records. The life insurance payout documentation. $2 million paid to Rebecca Castellano, widow. The sale of our Bellevue house. But also detailed records of the Serenity Estate events business. In 8 years of operation, they'd grossed $6.2 million. After expenses, they'd personally pocketed nearly $3 million. All built on stolen property. All built on my grave. Then I found another ledger. A separate accounting book, handwritten in Rebecca's careful script. It detailed payments to MC, Mexican contacts. $50,000 initially, dated 16 years ago. Then $10,000 a year. For 10 years as insurance payments. Then nothing for the last 5 years, but there were notes in the margins. MC demanding more money. Threatening exposure. Claim they still have HC alive and working for them. Ridiculous. Probably. Bluffing for more money. And a more recent note, dated 4 months ago, told MC to fuck off. They're lying. H is dead. If they had him, they would have killed him years ago. This is just an extortion attempt. Refused payment. Blocked their contact. She'd known. She'd known I was alive. The cartel had told her, and she'd refused to pay. Gambling that they wouldn't actually do anything. That I was more valuable to them alive than dead. She'd been right. But now she'd made herself their enemy. And mine. I photographed everything. Every document, every email, every financial record. Then I carefully put it all back exactly as I'd found it. I closed the safe, locked it. Left the guest house and disappeared into the night. I had everything I needed. Financial fraud. Insurance fraud. Conspiracy to commit murder. Tax evasion. Illegal gambling. Bribery of public officials. But I didn't want justice through the legal system. Not yet, because legal justice was uncertain. Lawyers could fight it. Evidence could be challenged. Rich people with good lawyers sometimes walked free. I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to lose everything piece by piece the way I had. I wanted them to understand what it's like to have your entire life stolen, so I built a plan. It would take months to execute. Months of careful, calculated destruction. I was patient. I'd waited 15 years. I could wait a few months more. Phase 1 was destroying their reputation. Serenity Estate's success depended on their perfect 5-star rating, on word-of-mouth referrals, on their reputation as premium professional event planners. I started sabotaging events in small ways that looked like accidents, a burst pipe during a wedding reception. I'd loosened a fitting in the bathroom. 200 guests and one working toilet. Disaster, a power outage during a corporate retreat. I'd tripped the main breaker at exactly the wrong moment, right as their CEO was giving a presentation. Catering problems. I'd adjusted the refrigerator temperature so food spoiled. Health code violation. Event canceled. Nothing catastrophic. Nothing that could be traced back to deliberate sabotage. Just a series of unfortunate incidents that made Serenity Estate seem unreliable. The reviews started coming. 4 stars, then 3 stars, then 2. Disaster wedding. Unprofessional. Would not recommend. Everything went wrong. Rebecca was frantic. I heard her on phone calls, trying to placate angry clients. offering refunds, making promises. Bookings slowed. Cancellations increased. Phase 2 was destroying their criminal enterprise. The poker games were illegal. The bribery was illegal. I had it all on video. I sent anonymous packages to the FBI, no return address. Just USB drives containing hours of footage showing a state senator doing cocaine, a judge accepting bribes, illegal gambling with hundreds of thousands of dollars changing hands. The FBI raided Serenity Estate on a Friday night in October. I watched from the woods as agents swarmed the property. They arrested everyone at the poker table. Senator Whitmore, Judge Morrison, Derek, Rebecca, everyone. They seized evidence. They confiscated the money on the table. They tore the place apart looking for more. Everyone was released on bail the next day. But the damage was done. The story hit the news. Illegal gambling ring at luxury event. Venue. State senator arrested in drug. Judge accused of accepting bribes. Serenity Estate was finished. No one would book events there now. The website went dark. The phone stopped ringing. Within 2 weeks, they'd canceled every remaining booking and refunded deposits. Phase 3 was destroying them financially. I'd spent 15 years watching cartel accountants move money. I knew every trick. I created fake vendor accounts using Marcus's help. Serenity Estate events paid vendors all the time. Caterers, florists, rental companies. I created a few more. Fake companies with real-looking invoices. I slowly drained their business account. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Electronic transfers to accounts that immediately moved the money somewhere else. Through a series of shells and cryptocurrency conversions until it was untraceable. By the time Rebecca noticed, 400,000 was gone. Vanished. She couldn't even report it, without admitting the money had been laundered in the first place. Phase 4 was personal destruction. I sent the emails, the evidence of my abduction, to Derek's ex-wife. She'd been screwed in their divorce. Gotten almost nothing because Derek had hidden assets. Now she had grounds to sue. Fraud, concealment. Her lawyers went after him like sharks. Sent the financial records to the IRS. Serenity. The state hadn't been paying taxes on the cash poker income. Turns out that was about $200,000 a year in unreported income. The IRS doesn't forgive that. I watched their world collapse from the shadows. Derek's law license was suspended pending investigation. Rebecca was being audited. They were hemorrhaging money on legal fees, defending against criminal charges, civil suits, tax fraud accusations. The business was bankrupt. They had to shut down completely. They put Serenity Estate up for sale, desperate for cash. No one would buy it. Not with all the negative publicity. Not with criminal investigations ongoing. Not with the cloud of scandal hanging over it. They were desperate, broken, exactly where I wanted them. Then came the final phase. Revelation. I waited until they were alone in the main house. A Friday night, no poker game, no guests, just the two of them. I'd been watching on the cameras. They were fighting about money, about lawyers, about who was to blame for everything falling apart. I walked in through the front door, the door I'd built with my own hands. They were in the living room. Rebecca saw me first. She was standing by the fireplace, wine glass in hand. She looked at me with irritation. The house is closed. How did you get in here? Derek turned. Mr. Hayes, what are you doing here? You're fired. We sent you an email. I pulled off the glasses I'd been wearing. I ran a hand through my hair. I let my posture change, let my voice drop to its natural register. I never got the email. Been a little busy. Rebecca's wine glass slipped from her hand. It shattered on the stone hearth I'd laid myself. Her face went completely white. No, you're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Supposed to be, I said. But here I am. Derek tried to run. I was faster. I grabbed him, muscle memory from 1,000 situations with the cartel, and slammed him against the wall. Sit down, both of you. They sat on the couch I'd picked out, in the house I'd built, looking at me like I was a ghost come to life. Which I was. How? Rebecca whispered. They told me they killed you. They showed me proof. They lied, I said. They kept me alive. They made me work for them. For 15 years. Designing hideouts, smuggling routes, safe houses. I became very good at it. And you know what I learned? What? Derek asked, his voice shaking. I learned patience. I learned how to watch, how to wait, how to destroy my enemies so completely. They never see it coming. I pulled out my tablet. I played them the surveillance footage. The poker games, the bribery, the cocaine. Then I played audio recordings of their private conversations, planning tax evasion, discussing how to handle the Mexican situation, laughing about how no one would ever find out what they'd done to me. With each piece of evidence, Derek's face grew paler. Rebecca started crying. You destroyed us. Derek said, everything, the business, our reputation, our money. You did all of this. You destroyed me first, I said. You took 15 years of my life. You stole my mother's house. You turned her memorial into a casino and a whorehouse for corrupt politicians. You thought you'd gotten away with it. We can fix this, Rebecca said desperately. We can make this right. We still have assets. We can pay you. Whatever you want. I don't want your money, I said. I want you to understand what you took from me. I showed them more evidence. The forged death certificate. The emails planning my murder. The financial records showing exactly how much they'd profited from my death. Every detail of their crimes, documented, undeniable. What do you want? Derek asked. Justice. Then I told them the FBI already had copies of everything. The DEA had copies. The IRS had copies. The state attorney general had copies. The Seattle Times had copies and would be running a story in 2 days. Every piece of evidence, every crime, every fraudulent document. You can't do this, Rebecca said. We're your family. We were married for 23 years. You killed that man, I said. The Henry Castellano you knew died the night you had him thrown in a van. I'm someone else now. Someone you created. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I'd called them before walking in. They came with warrants. Arrest warrants for Rebecca and Derek Paulson. Charges included conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, insurance fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, bribery, and a dozen other counts. They put Rebecca in handcuffs. She looked at me as they led her out. I did love you once. Before you became obsessed with your dead mother. Before you abandoned our marriage for that house. You didn't love me, I said. You loved what I could provide. The moment that stopped, I became disposable. That's not love. That's business. They took Derek next. He didn't say anything. Just looked at the floor as they read him his rights. When they were gone, I stood alone in the house, my mother's house. I walked through the rooms, seeing what they'd done to it, how they'd corrupted it. The dining room where cartel bosses had played poker now. The kitchen where bribes had been counted. The bedroom where my wife had slept with the lawyer who'd arranged my abduction. It would all have to be gutted, cleaned, purified. The trial lasted 8 months. The prosecution had overwhelming evidence. Video, audio, documents, financial records. Rebecca and Derek's lawyers tried to fight it. Tried to claim the evidence was obtained illegally. That I'd illegally surveilled them. But I'd been working as a lawful employee on the property. I had every right to be there. And many of the documents had come from their own safe, which I'd legally accessed, as part of a criminal investigation. I was cooperating. With Todd, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Rebecca got 22 years in federal prison. Derek got 27 because of prior involvement in arranging my abduction and because he'd used his position as an attorney to facilitate crimes. They'd both be in their 80s when they got out. If they lived that long, the court returned the property to me. It took another year to undo the legal mess of being declared dead. But eventually, Henry Castellano existed again officially. I had to explain the 15 years to federal investigators. I cooperated fully. Told them everything I knew about the Sinaloa cartel's operations. In exchange for my cooperation and because I'd been held against my will, they granted me immunity. No charges for my work with the cartel. I gutted the house. Completely. I tore out everything Rebecca and Derek had added. The commercial kitchen gone. The expanded deck gone. The white paint stripped away to reveal the natural cedar underneath. I restored it exactly as I'd originally designed it. Every detail. I brought back the wildflower garden. I rebuilt the guest house as a quiet retreat. I hung photos of my mother in every room. It took 2 years and cost me $500,000. Money I made from selling the story rights, from consulting on anti-elder fraud cases, from designing security systems for high net worth individuals who wanted to protect themselves from the kind of betrayal I'd experienced. When it was finished, I stood on that deck exactly where I'd stood 20 years ago when I first completed the house. I watched the sunset turn the lake to gold, and I felt my mother's presence, finally, after everything. After 20 years, I'd kept my promise. This house stood as her memorial, pure again, sacred again. Marcus asked me sometimes if it was worth it. 15 years of hell in Mexico, 2 years of calculated revenge, 4 years of legal battles and reconstruction. Was it worth it? I tell him the truth. Those 15 years taught me something. Most people never learn. Patience, real patience. Not the kind where you wait a few days or weeks or months. The kind where you wait years, decades if necessary, for the perfect moment to strike. The kind where you become invisible, gather your strength, and when your enemy has completely forgotten about you, that's when you destroy them. Rebecca and Derek thought they'd gotten away with it. For 15 years they lived in luxury, built success on my grave, slept soundly believing I was dead and forgotten. But justice doesn't forget. Victims don't forget. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, but only if you're patient enough to see it through. I live at Lake Serenity now. Full-time. I've rebuilt my architecture practice, small scale. Residential projects for people who actually want to live in beautiful homes, not profit from them. I design houses for families, for people who understand that a home is more than an investment. It's a sacred space, every morning. I have coffee on the deck my mother never got to sit on. I watch the sunrise over the water she loved. I feel her with me. And I know I finally kept my promise. This house stands as her memorial. Not corrupted, not commercialized, pure. Sometimes people ask what I learned from 15 years in hell. From being betrayed by the person I trusted most. From being declared dead while I was still alive. I tell them this. The worst prisons aren't made of concrete and bars. They're made of betrayal and stolen time and the knowledge that the people who were supposed to love you wanted you erased. But here's the other lesson. You can't get stolen time back. Those 15 years are gone forever. But you can make the years you have left count for something. You can choose to be destroyed by what happened. Or you can choose to become someone stronger. Someone patient enough to see justice done. I survived because I had a purpose. Even when I was designing hiding places for criminals, I knew one day I'd use those skills against the biggest criminals of all. The ones who smiled to my face and put a contract on my life. The lake looks the same as it did when I was a kid, when Mom and I would sit on the shore eating sandwiches and watching the water. The peace is the same. My mother used to say water doesn't hold grudges. It just keeps flowing, keeps moving forward, and eventually wears down even the hardest stone. I understand that now. I didn't destroy Rebecca and Derek in a single moment of violence or revenge. I eroded them slowly, patiently, inevitably. I let time and truth do the work. And in the end, they crumbled under the weight of their own crimes. That's the real lesson. Evil people always think they're smarter than everyone else. They think they can cheat and steal and murder their way to success. And maybe they can for a while, maybe for years, maybe even decades. But time is patient. Justice is patient. And somewhere out there, someone they wronged is learning, growing, preparing. The dead can wait. And when they rise with purpose. I'm living proof. Henry Castellano died 15 years ago in a Mexican desert. But he came back. Not with violence, not with rage, but with patience and evidence, and the kind of justice that doesn't end until everything is made right. I'm 58 years old. I lost 15 years to captivity, 4 years to revenge and recovery. I have maybe 20 or 30 good years left if I'm lucky, and I'm going to spend them here, in my mother's house, watching the water, designing beautiful things, and living in peace, because that's what justice looks like. Not revenge that leaves you empty, but restoration that makes you whole again. The sun is setting now. The water is turning gold. I raise my coffee cup to the sky, to my mother's memory. To everyone who thinks they'll never get justice. Wait, I whisper. Be patient. Your time will come. It always does.